Marcus and Daniel both came into a $500,000 windfall. Marcus did what any self-crowned financial guru would do. He put $100,000 down on a rental property with 80% leverage, dropped $80,000 into a trending tech startup, and leased a Porsche 911 because, in his words, you have to look the part. He posted his new passive income lifestyle all over social media. Daniel, however, drove a 2014 Camry and never spoke about money. He checked three specific, little-known financial benchmarks, then vanished into a quiet, wealth-compounding machine. When the Federal Reserve jacked up interest rates and the rental market froze, Marcus's tenants stopped paying. The leveraged property became a cash furnace. The startup cratered. Within 4 months, the Porsche was repossessed, the property foreclosed, and Marcus was living on credit cards. Daniel's portfolio, meanwhile, not only survived the chaos, it expanded. His net worth grew 40% while he slept. Marcus led a high income, and a few assets made him above average. Daniel knew the truth. Above average is not a feeling. It's a mathematical threshold defined by three terrifying statistics that the financial industry buries. Those statistics are the only scoreboard that matters. Here they are. The average 35-year-old in North America feels wealthy if they earn $100,000 and own a home they can barely afford. Society has told them they're killing it. The data says otherwise. To be genuinely above average, not just higher income, an individual must clear hurdles so brutal that fewer than 3% of the population clears all three. These are not opinions. They are cold, government-published, and central bank-tracked numbers that reveal who will survive the next recession and who will be financially annihilated. The first sign of being way above average is a net worth that is at least 20 times annual income. The Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances reveals the median net worth for a household headed by someone between 35 and 44 is just $91,300. That figure includes home equity. Strip out the home, and the liquid net worth is barely enough to survive a few months. Meanwhile, an individual earning $100,000 a year who considers themselves above average would need a net worth of $2 million to hit the 20x mark. If a person makes $250,000, the required net worth jumps to $5 million. Most high earners fail this test spectacularly. The typical high-income worker has a net worth that rarely exceeds 3 to 5 times salary. A study by Ramsey Solutions found that the top 1% millionaire had a net worth of around $14 million, which coincidentally is roughly 20x a top 1% income. This is not a coincidence. It's the compounding math of someone who stopped spending to impress strangers. Daniel checked this sign first. He realized that a $500,000 windfall against a $120,000 income put him at just over 4x. He was technically average by high earner standards. So he refused to spend a single dollar on lifestyle. Instead, he deployed the capital into broad market index funds and cash-flowing assets, aiming to close the gap to 20x in under a decade. That decision alone made him recession-proof. The second sign is having at least 24 months of living expenses in cash or near cash instruments, separate from investment portfolios. The scary stat? According to the Federal Reserve, 37% of American adults could not cover an unexpected $400 expense without borrowing or selling something. A Bankrate survey found 57% could not handle a $1,000 emergency. The average person is one flat tire away from a financial cascade. An above-average individual, however, operates on a different law of physics. They keep a liquidity fortress equivalent to 2 full years of expenses, not 3 months, not 6 months, 24 months. This cash cushion isn't sitting idle. It's held in high-yield savings, short-term treasury bills, and money market funds earning a competitive yield, but instantly accessible without selling assets in a down market. During the 2020 crash, those with only a standard emergency fund had to sell stocks at the very moment they were down 30%. Daniel's 24-month reserve allowed him to not only cover his baseline living costs, but to aggressively buy assets when blood was running in the streets. Marcus, who had all his cash tied up in deal flow and margin accounts, was forced to liquidate at the worst possible time, crystallizing losses that broke him. The data is ruthless. Anyone who can cover 2 years of expenses without a job or selling assets is not playing the same game as the rest of the population. The third and most misunderstood sign is a 0% toxic debt to asset ratio. The average American household carries $103,358 in debt, according to NerdWallet's annual analysis, spending credit cards, auto loans, student loans, and personal loans. Even those making $200,000 often carry five-figure credit card balances and massive car payments, believing that as long as they can service the debt, they're fine. The above-average individual uses leverage with surgical precision. They have zero consumer debt, none. Any debt they carry is exclusively strategic, a mortgage on a cash flow positive rental property where the rent covers all costs, or a securities-backed line of credit used to arbitrage a short-term opportunity while the underlying assets remain untouched. The critical statistic, the ratio of toxic, non-income producing debt to total assets must be zero. If a person has a $40,000 car loan and $50,000 in stocks, their toxic debt to asset ratio is 80%, a financial cancer. Daniel had zero. He drove the Camry, and his only debt was a small margin line he used once to acquire a business whose cash flow paid it off within 90 days. When the recession hit and banks started calling in lines of credit, Daniel owed nothing toxic. Marcus, on the other hand, had leveraged his primary residence, had 2 car notes, and had used a personal loan to invest in a friend's startup. That toxic debt amplified every loss, leaving him with negative net worth overnight. A person can perform a brutal diagnosis. Multiply annual pre-tax income by 20. If net worth falls below that figure, the individual remains in the statistical average. Next, measure total monthly expenses against liquid cash. The number must be 24 times monthly outflow. Anything less means liquidity resilience is dangerously average. Finally, sum all debts that do not produce income. If that number exceeds zero, the financial structure is average, regardless of what an Instagram feed suggests. Banks, auto lenders, and credit card companies spend billions convincing the public that debt is a tool for building credit and a high FICO score equals wealth. It doesn't. A FICO score is simply a measure of how well someone has serviced debt, not how much wealth they've built. The 3 signs outlined here are the very metrics that private wealth managers use when vetting a new client. They ask for net worth to income, liquid resilience, and consumer debt exposure. If a prospective client doesn't clear these, they get ignored or sold products designed to extract fees, not build fortresses. Daniel knew this. He designed his entire financial architecture around these 3 statistics, and as a result, the economic chaos that shattered Marcus was nothing more than a buying opportunity. The playbook from being merely average to statistically superior is brutally simple. Step 1, kill all toxic debt. Sell the car that can't be paid off in cash, cancel the credit card float, and destroy any loan whose payment doesn't come from an asset. Step 2, build the 24-month liquidity fortress before investing a single extra dollar in the stock market. The order matters. Step 3, once the fortress stands, channel every additional dollar into income-producing instruments, broad index funds, rental properties with equity, businesses with recurring revenue, until net worth smashes through the 20x floor. Anyone who does this will find that within 3 to 5 years, the 3 signs all flip green. At that point, a financial panic doesn't induce fear. It induces a quiet smile. Daniel stayed calm because his numbers didn't budge. Marcus crumbled because his numbers were an illusion. The gap between average and way above average is not a gap of income. It is a chasm of understanding and discipline measured by these 3 statistics. The next time a coworker brags about a raise or a friend flaunting new luxury SUV, check the numbers behind the curtain. More than likely, their toxic debt is rising, their liquidity is minimal, and their net worth relative to income is deeply average. The 3 signs will tell the truth long before the market does. And when the market finally does speak, it will not negotiate.